What kind of obstacles did he have?
The main obstacle that he had was when he first arrived here, the city was spinning out of control, essentially. There was no plan for the city. And what really bothered him was the fact that you had a power plant, right downtown. Can you imagine the city with a power plant directly downtown? That it really could have become just a blighted area. And so he had to convince citizens that maybe didn't necessarily share his outlook politically, but because he bought the newspaper that gave him the means to editorialize. But he was so involved in the stuff outside of the newspaper. I think the main obstacle he had to overcome was the fact that he wasn't a great businessman, and he had to eventually sell the paper because financially it wasn't working. So he was a very committed person, but not necessarily a great businessman. But he ended up working for the newspaper for decades, so he overcame. It was just, and eventually, as they continued to advocate for planning, they ran into a citizens groups that just didn't want to spend any more money, didn't want to borrow the money, and so that happened more like in the 20s, towards the end of his career. The city stopped being as progressive as it was early, and they said, we don't want to borrow any more money, and that was really not a good decision by the city to not adopt certain planning procedures. So there were obstacles later, but not early on. It was not as much. People were ready to buy the waterfront, to preserve it, and then that feeling from the city eroded over time. Partly because there was a lot of corruption, and a lot of the projects that they were paving the streets everywhere, and people were just stealing the money. And so when Straub and others tried to go back later for some more, to say, let's put this other plan in place, people were like, why? So you could steal our money again? So there was a real reticence to continue to progress, essentially, as the progressive movement then kind of fell apart.